I got 12:02 here on the East Coast in Jersey City, New Jersey. So we'll get started, Elaine. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Right.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Elaine. I'm one of the co-founders of the Jobs to Be Done Toolkit, along with Jim Callback here. One of the things we really like to do when we get started is just like check in, where is everybody from? We've talked about it a little bit when people were rolling in, but as you've noticed, Jim's in Jersey City. I'm on the other side of New York over in Brooklyn. It's a beautiful summer day. We're so happy to just be here with everybody. And we really enjoy these Jobs to Be Done Untangled because they are just a really casual opportunity to come in and talk about what you're doing with jobs to be done in the workplace, answer questions, hear your stories. I see a couple of regular faces in the crowd, so you guys kind of know how it goes in terms of, just having a nice conversation. A couple of just operating notes is that so post your questions in the chat, and then what I'll do is copy them into the mural board that we're sharing. But typically when it comes time to ask the questions, we will ask you to come on and ask it, depending on how the flow of the conversation is going. So, feel free to use your camera, engage with us basically. Another thing about the chat is that we do copy that and include it in like the notes that we send out afterwards. So that conversation will be shared as well. Sometimes it's really rich. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So if you want to share what you're doing, but you don't necessarily see an opportunity to jump on and talk with us, then that's a really great opportunity as well. So I'm here we have two special guests with us today, Martin Bender and Manuela Risch. Welcome.
Hey, guys.
Hi. Thank you for joining us. You guys are in Berlin, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
Wonderful.
that's right. Yeah.
So thank you for wrapping up your Tuesday with us. Martin and Manuela are the founders of AboutJackie.de, and you will have a chance to hear what they've been working on. They're going to share some resources, and then of course, we'll start the conversation and we can all talk about what we're doing with jobs to be done. We do like to take a couple minutes at the beginning of the webinar to just kind of plug some of the things that we have for some of the resources that we provide. So we have this Jobs to Be Done Essentials course, which is about 4 hours of video, and it's a ton of other resources. So there are templates, there are resource guides. We've got like a lot of stuff in there with each section. So it's almost like we designed it really for facilitators as much as just a plain like straight up learning resource. The Essentials course is pretty broad. It covers all of jobs to be done. However, what we've done is we offer this live training course, Job Maps from Beginning to End, which is a deep dive into how to use job maps specifically. So we kind of focus in on this one really specific tool within jobs to be done, and we kind of show you what that looks like with the intention that you can go back to your organization or your team and also lead a job mapping workshop. So the next one is July 18th, 20th, and 22nd. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11 a.m. Eastern? Yeah, to 1 p.m.
Yeah.
And we usually allow like the last 15 to 20 minutes for just an open Q&A with Jim and I. Yeah. Additionally, the next iteration of Jobs to Be Done Untangled will be July 26th. So last Tuesday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern. We also record the webinars, as you've noticed, probably when you entered, and then we post those onto YouTube. So they're all out there available. We know some people like to kind of listen to them if they aren't able to make it, which I think is really wonderful and special. So all of those resources we're trying to gather and put out into the world. So as I mentioned earlier, ask your questions in Zoom. I'll post them into the mural board, and then we'll take everything kind of from there. We get to the Q&A. But first, we're going to do a presentation, and then the Q&A will start.
Yeah. First, I want to welcome our guests. Hey, everybody. Jim Callback here. Thanks for joining. Nice to see you, Jen. Thanks for joining. Nice to see everybody else here. Special guest today, Martin Bender, Manuela Risch. And Martin and I actually worked together. When I lived in Germany, I was in Hamburg, and he was in Berlin, and I was going there like once a week, and we worked at U-Seats together.
Yes.
Manuela, did we ever meet in person?
You left a half year before I joined.
Right, and you were at U-Seats too then?
Yes, I joined U-Seats later, and in person, not, I think, in last year, digitally, but not in
digitally,
person.
But not in
we
person.
need to change that.
Well, welcome. So what are you up to now? Let's start with you, Manuela. What are you doing now?
Yeah, well, so UCITS is a design agency with a really strong customer focus, and after that, I'm a user researcher, and after that, I started doing I started freelancing. First, I just wanted to experience how other companies work, and with the years of experience, I also learned how I really want to do research. What is something I enjoy doing. I feel it's needed in the world. I feel because research has such an amazing part, and it should, if it's not done nicely, if it's also done maybe sometimes with calm. And so I'm more focusing on that, and we will also talk.
Go team research. Yeah, I'm all with you. And I think you're going to talk a lot more about the perspective that you just laid out there, you know, getting deeper into the research. But Martin, what are you doing these days in Berlin?
Yeah, currently I'm a freelancer, so on the product UX side, kind of, and yeah, so work for many different clients, but in the end, we also do our service about Jackie now with Manuela, and this is also where I with UCITS I also met Manuela there, and then we had our own experience, she from the user research side and mine from the product and UX design side. And so my thing was always with insights, when they are really good, then it's really inspiring. But I had a lot of cases where, I have this long presentations and dry outcomes. And then it's sometimes also hard to get the inspiration from it. So and that's also what we know.
I think that's a great pivot into I'd like Manuela to share some of this, because you user research findings by bullet point, right? Be good and insightful as well too. But when you guys showed me what you were doing with the storytelling and the videos, for me it made a huge connection of a little bit more academic and dry jobs to be done work, which you have, right? But then you created these inspiring stories, and that's the connection between those two is really what I'd like to focus on. But Manuela, I'll give you screen control now if you want to take us through about Jackie and just show us in about 10 minutes or so. Just show us some of the things that you're doing over there. Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I'd love to, but maybe just one or two words how it happened. So I worked with product teams a lot, and I started doing jobs to be done with them. And for the product teams, it was quite easy. And I see myself now, but it's good. So for product teams, it worked really good, and we implemented it. And then there was like brand joining us and saying, "Oh, you did this job to be done. Can I have a look at it? Can we do a workshop?" And then marketing came and did a marketing campaign based on the jobs to be done. And this founder also came like, "Oh, interesting. Could I do some strategy about it?" And for me, that was that moment where I thought jobs to be done is something you really can also change organizations. But we talked about this dry communication. And we also know jobs to be done is something that you can have for a few years. They are not changing that much, but a research presentation often disappears at the moment the research is gone. It's like, it's really connected to me. And that was also a reason for about Jackie. And with Martin, there came also another perspective, and maybe you can also share quickly your perspective before I go into the next slide.
Yeah, I mean, I already said a little bit about this try presentation, and I think when it's really done well, then it could be also inspiring. But yeah, like you said, the most inspiring is before when you're really with the people, and then so I also have the chance as a product designer to do the interviews or be a part of the interviews.
Yeah, when I was a product designer too, Martin, I always wanted to do my own research. I always wanted that firsthand experience. I wanted to go to the office. I wanted to see the person in their pain, right then. And I found as a designer, working off a report was so unsatisfying that I wanted all the context. And sometimes I lament the division between UX and, interaction design and stuff like that. And I think it should be, that's just my perspective. I have a much more generalist view of the world as well too. But the world is such that you do have specialists. It would in design, but also out throughout the rest of the organization. As you mentioned, there are brand specialists and marketing. And so it's not just about, communicating with your own team. It's also about the whole organization. And when you guys showed me what you came up with, like a light bulb came on in my head. And that's what I want you to share with everybody.
Yes. I'll do it now. We talked enough. So
we built up the suspense long enough now.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Now it's the expectation high.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is the website we will look at videos and we will take that out in the recording. So for those people who are watching it after that, they can contact us. We are happy to give you also a personal tour. We are allowed to share all the videos with a community, but we are not allowed to share it in a public part where we are not so much in control, because they are private and sensitive topics as well. So just go here to About Jetty and write us here.
For that, Martin and Manuela, I'm sure there's a lot more that you can share. And I know the videos themselves are quite long, right? They're like 6 minutes or 11 minutes, right? So there's a lot in there. And you have some of the overview to just understand who they are and what their situation is. But I love the fact that you can also just jump right into the video at a certain point. So if you want to talk about getting a specific job done, you have just those smaller videos as well too. So you're allowing for your audience, and your audience is brand managers and stakeholders and other people in the organization and clients that you might be serving as a freelancer, that they can watch the whole thing. And they're great. They're great videos, by the way. I might be biased because I speak German, so I might have a different emotional response than some of you on the call, but they're really well done videos that are very, very compelling when you watch them from beginning to end. But you can also just have a focused conversation around a specific job and say, let's see what our audience, what our target job performers said about that specific topic. So you're allowing different points of access as well too. It becomes very versatile. And then of course, and correct me if I'm wrong, Manuela, but the fact that it's kind of data backed, it's backed by data, right? You did a survey to get the rankings, is that right?
Yeah, that was really important to us, because when we did the first tests, we had the stories. We loved the stories, and people were saying, "Yeah, well, what do I do with that? it's nice. I can also watch a documentary." And then we said, yeah, let's put together the experiences I had with the jobs to be done and with my clients and that. And yeah, but in the end, we, as a decision maker, you also need basis for making the decision. And if we present yeah, we also talked about it in another call. If you present them just like beautiful jobs to be done, yeah, it's like, yeah, thank you, but I need to make a decision. And that's why it's so important for us to give the quantitative basis and making it a bit, like you said it before, scientific, but not disconnected from the emotional part, where our heart is in the end.
And when we first started talking, last year, I had just gotten off the phone call with a friend of mine who works for a large company, and he was doing a lot of jobs to be done work. So he had all the science. Right, he had job maps and he did prioritization and workshops with his teams, and he had all the little stars and the little points. And he said to me, he said, I need a way to then now communicate all this in a way that other people are going to relate to, that they're going to understand, and that they're going to have a reaction to as well too. And then I think it was like the next day, you guys showed me this, and I said, I think there's a problem out there of, research insights that can be valid and, as scientific as jobs to be done can get, but then how do you make that consumable and relatable for other people? Because ultimately, I don't know, for me, that's ultimately what you're trying to do, right? Jobs to be done is a means to an end, to create better innovations or products and services, or create better experiences, whatever your goal might be. But you never do that alone. You always have to bring people along with you, right? And the question as a researcher, I've always found, and a UX designer, was, how do I get everybody else to come along with me? And I just found that the way that you did it was just, it sucked me right into it. I don't know if other folks had that reaction on the call either. Did you, so have you shared this with stakeholders and with a team? What were some of the reactions that you got from your stakeholders?
Martin, do you want?
Yeah, so I think every people that we have spoken about that finds it really really interesting, and we saw also that they get kind of touched from the movies, so I think we have some rate that say, okay, how to sell it, kind of this question. Okay, yeah, so we need it really quickly. This now the insights to make decisions. So there's this time selling part, of course, and then we had the other part that were really interesting and now going more in the detail conversation with us.
Right.
Yeah. But and then on the beginning, we had also some understanding things that we fixed now also with the website.
Okay, there you go.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I love your point, Manuela, that Jobs to be Done has a longevity. That's the way I phrase it, that the insights that you get don't go stale very quickly, that you can look back, you know, because the insights that you just showed there, they're going to be around as long as people have money, probably, you know, even more than 3 or 5 years. Because one of the things that struck me when you showed me the work was just how much time you put into the video and the storytelling aspect of it. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because it's really, really well done, but it seems like it took a lot of time from I'm like clumsy when it comes to video editing, but it seems like you put a lot of time into that storytelling.
Yeah, so yeah, first of all, it starts not just with the editing, it starts also before we have actually the interviews. So we try to find the right story that we actually want to tell. So so we have some, we have first of all kind of the recruitment interviews where we also find out, okay, which story they have to tell. And then we try to find the patterns. And then when we have kind of the storyline, like in the documentary production kind of, then we, okay, where we want to go deeper and which images also we want to provide for that, so that we then, when we are in the interview, like a normal user research home interview, that we also, yeah, not have talking heads shots, but also kind of a personal details and that connected to the story.
Gotcha.
And so then we have two interviews. One is the story interview, and one is the Jobs to be Done interview, where we go in the details. And after that, there comes the long editing production. Not long, I mean, it's we do it. I think the first one kind of was really, I don't know, yeah, 1 week, but then it gets, we try to make it really effective as possible.
Okay.
So in the documentary, some people do a half a year or 1 year.
Right,
that this time we don't have. So we
no, yeah. And I think that's
up
the root of my question, is that sometimes, you know, when you have a lot of research projects, if you're working for a large company, you might not have a lot of time, you know, just enough time to get a PowerPoint deck together and then deliver that, and then you're on. But it seemed like you really took a pause and you said, no, we actually want to invest more in the storytelling than you might otherwise do with research, with research results. I think though, go ahead, Manuel.
Just to add to that, the results will also keep longer in the company. I did this huge personas project for a big startup in Berlin. We made a half year of research. It is happening. It's not only us that take some time to do research. And after the research, most of the people left the company. So the moment of being in their homes and the inspiration was just like cool for them, but not cool for the company. And yes, and it's also, when I left as a freelancer, it was that anyway. So I feel there's like research that you can do quickly, perfect, you need it in the project, but research that should address more people, more teams.
Right.
You can also take, I always take also in my normal research projects, I always take time for analysis. No one does that, but I feel if you talk to people, also analyze the insights.
Right.
Otherwise, you can just, you don't spend any time and money because you don't do it. And I think that is like, you don't need to make every research initiative big, but if you do one that is big and should be like transport something
strategic, right? Strategic research effort, right?
But not on the product, on usability, it would be crazy, but on a strategic level where you have also to convince shareholders, you have to convince management, C-level people, but also teams until you know everyone in the company. I think it's important to take the time and also because stories, it's nothing that you. It's story time is always when people sitting together on the fire and having time, and not like between the coffee and the cigarette and then we jump. So I think there is some quality in it.
It's to just read the film description and say, okay, now I'm really impact. No, you're looking at the movie and looking at the body language when they say the insights and get really touched and.
Right, agree.
Then you actually want to really change maybe your strategy direction.
Right, agree. Okay, we got some questions from folks. Jen.
Yeah, Jen and Thiba basically had sort of the same question.
Same question.
Yeah.
You want to turn your mic on, Jen? And hey, Thiba, I didn't see you join us. You can turn your cam on then. But Jen, how you doing? What's your question?
Good, Jim. How are you?
I'm good.
I was just curious, like when you were showing the star ratings, I noticed later you had done 100 interviews, I think, or you were going to. I was just kind of trying to get a better understanding of where those star ratings came from. Was it that individual story, just to kind of gauge how important that was to them, or did you quantify it at all through surveys?
Yeah, so we took out the insights from this interviews, but then we quantified it in a survey. We now did 100. That's not enough, but it's also not paid at the moment. So we
pretty good sample.
And it was a quantitative survey where we showed some scenarios and and validated that.
Did you? No, wait, Martin. I think you might have just said it, but I just want to make sure I'm clear on it. Did you do the research and know what the prioritization of the jobs to be done were before you went back and did the interview, the documentary type interviews with the folks? Okay.
No, it's actually a good question, because we have sometimes people saying, oh, we did this amazing job to be done, and now could you do great videos? And that's not how we work. Yeah, okay. Because we feel we also need, so it is not a production of it. Those people are not actors. Right. You know, we want them real, and sometimes we have the issue that something is really important for Alexis, and the quantitative data shows, well, he's alone, no one else. And it's okay, because you still need the context to understand the job to be done that was important for many people. So yeah, now we are trying to be we're not leading.
Keep it real, yeah. I like that. Great. So Thiba, you had another question. What's your other question here, Thiba?
I was curious to know, and I jumped in early. I'm late. Sorry, guys. What's the process of actually sharing the videos? Because we've produced videos in the past, but we can only get kind of patchy responses. Some people will watch some, but not all of them, and they over-index on the ones that they have seen, but they haven't seen. So what was your process in watching these together and pulling out some of their kind of impact and satisfaction, all those insights as well?
Yes, so we are actually really early with the service, so we don't have so much experience now in this analyzing and workshop phase. But what we want to do is kind of really have the time to just sitting there and watch these videos, and also have them the time to put get the input or the first impression, not to give them rational questions beforehand, so that they really, first of all, get it like they want and like they feel, and then have some provided some good questions, and let them tell actually the journey and the story, and maybe also which jobs to be done they have found, so that we don't give them all the answers, and then we come up with our answers, like how we see it, and then come together and find these ideas and directions that we want to go move forward.
I think really important is, Jim, you mentioned it, research is not nothing you can do alone, and things you do with research you can definitely not do alone. It's always a team. It needs a workshop, it needs a guidance, like a sense-making session. We have all the documents there, we can make some decisions, we can work with it, but it's always also the team that needs to then decide on the next steps, how they want to build their company or their brand or and so on. So there is a workshop planned after that.
Yeah, and I can imagine this being homework for the workshop, right? And compelling people to watch these by giving them some thought exercises. For instance, I'm just brainstorming off the top of my head. One thing that I would do would be jot down your favorite quote that you heard in the video. And when you get in the workshop, everybody does introductions, and then they say what they're quoted. That's how you start the session, and everybody's talking about their quote and why, right? Just an icebreaker to warm up. Another thing that I like to do, and I've done this in one of the case studies in my book, is we did a full quantitative survey on jobs to be done, but I also did that survey on the product team. And then I compared the scores that they thought were the top things to what you actually found, right? And there were some big gaps, like the top ones they didn't get. So you got to be careful about that, because you don't want to shame them. But the other thing I would do would be write down, and you'd have to formulate it somehow, but write down your top jobs. And then you can say, nope, you missed them, or whatever, or yep, you got them, and so then you have that conversation. And I'm just, again, this is what just spontaneously came to me. But the point is, I think that this is a rich conversation piece that you could definitely workshop around, right? Is that a good answer, Thiba?
It's a good answer. I was just going to add that when we've watched videos in the past together or remotely at home, I've usually had like a Muirly board set up. So as they're watching in their own time, they can jot down
take notes,
key insights onto the board, and then we analyze the board together. But that's been really helpful.
Yeah. Elaine, I was thinking of a watch party too. We tried to do watch parties for some of our videos as well too. But I could imagine like a watch party, because one of the problems of just said, I think Thiba hit on it. You send out a link and you say, watch this video, like only 50% of the people are going to do it, right? I think if you make it homework for a workshop, or you have a watch party, and maybe multiple watch parties, so that you get everybody through, at a minimum, you could run everybody through it so that they get exposed to it all.
Yeah, I think where About Jackie really resonates with me in the context of the watch party that I mentioned is that, a team leader shared it and said, I think this is relevant to your project. And so I said, well, I'm going to be watching it. Does anybody else want to join? But I didn't really have, it didn't make sense to prepare for something like that. And so then we're watching the video, and it turned, it's from last fall. Somebody from another team held the conversation. It was responding to a different issue, although it was like parallel to mine. And so about 15 minutes in, they're talking about a lot of stuff. And I'm like, there's some insights in here, but, is it really that useful to have all these 5 other people on the call with watching this right now? It's a little bit, so it was kind of a little bit awkward, just because the production value wasn't that great. And, the insights were really scattered around with like other questions and some things. And so I like the idea of, having something that's more focused and more polished, especially in corporate America, like that really gets people's attention.
But plus this is compelling. This is like, bring your popcorn, and like, it's like, totally engaging. and something that I could see a group of people doing together.
Oh, Anna has a quick question. That's a good
Oh.
one. What exactly is a watch party?
Oh.
It's basically where you stream everybody, it's just a meeting, you send out a
Yeah.
Zoom link, and then you stream the video. So, nobody's really on camera, nobody's really talking, you're just running the video for
Right.
everyone. And it's kind of just, as Jim mentioned, a set time to
Yeah.
do it.
Well, I mean, I think for me, it goes to the problem of async work. Again, if you say, hey, everybody read my research report, or everybody watch this video, you're going to get unequal participation. So something like a watch party would be, well, let's do it in real time then, so you can actually see who did it. I would, as Manuela and Martin were talking about, I would front load a workshop with these videos in some way, make them the stimulus for then sense making and hands-on. Let's think about what this means for us and our teams right now, right? To make it even more active. All right, Dan, you got a question here. Do you want to unmute and ask that one?
Yeah, I think you touched a little bit upon that when you were showing survey results, summaries, and kind of high-level jobs. I think what I'm struggling a little bit is level of abstraction. Because if you stay on a very generic level, well, that's not very useful, because then it's kind of obvious. But then you start diving into details, and then all experiences are very unique. And then it's way harder to map or digest, and it's also not very useful. So I'm curious, what's your experience?
Classic problem of jobs to be done. And in finance, it's really tough, right? But what you can't do, I think, Dan, is what you're saying, is you can't say, have peace of mind with my money, because that's what everybody wants. That's super aspirational. So can you guys, hey, Manuela and Martin, how did you deal with that level of abstraction? Because you talked about it a little bit. You said you had some high level ones on purpose kind of there, but then you also got more granular. So how did you attack that problem?
Yeah, I can start. So first of all, our goal is really to strip this jobs to be done framework really to the bone. So not have different phase, the main jobs to be done, or the emotional or social. So to have in the end just a list with with the opportunity stars at the end. So that's that people don't think too much on the logic side of the framework itself. So really easy to digest in the end. But of course, like Dan said, it is really a challenge to get then the real detail level, to not to have it too abstract. Maybe Manuela can say something about the challenge, because she in the end have to find them.
I would add, well, this showcase is also a little bit of a hard project, in a way that we took a topic we liked, because we believe being more sustainable as a bank is not printing the credit card on wood. That is not, like, no one, that's marketing oriented. That's not the real challenges in the world. And we feel we need sometimes to bring the companies to the idea that they could start a little bit higher than what they are normally. And yes, so that was that's one thing the showcase looks like. It's a bit high on the levels, I admit. But with a client, we would go into a conversation. What is your level you need? And then also be more concrete. I would still force them to go one level higher that they want. And in the end, of course, the stories will also always be a little bit more on this documentary style, but we can decide. I mean, jobs to be done, we know it, we can use it in so different way. That's amazing, and that's the biggest challenge. But with my projects, I always do different levels with everyone. I don't know, it's never one size fits all, but we always find something for that team, that challenge that we need. And and that's my answer, finding it as a team, and we try to.
What do you think, then? How do you handle that abstraction layer problem?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I recently was having this as a challenge, so I'm not sure yet if it's solved yet or not. It's a work in progress. But what we started with is really mapping very detailed experiences. You know, let's call it user journeys for the simplicity of it. And then we try to make a few steps back and zoom out, because I work with people who really like to know every single detail about everything,
right.
which is very helpful when you want to map every single detail. But then, of course, when you try to get on a bit of a more abstract level, then it becomes a little bit, well, kind of frustrating, I guess, for some people. And then you notice it, and then you try to explain indeed, like, why are we actually making these few steps back, because otherwise it's impossible to summarize things. But I don't have a good answer yet.
Yeah. I
Still
mean, neither
looking.
do I mean, I struggle with that as well too. And if I were to go back and rewrite my book, I would actually have a lot more information on this topic, because it's really hard to solve. And I get into a situation, depends on the domain. And I think finance is probably one of the more trickier domains to actually work in. But what Jobs to Be Done can potentially help you with is what to focus on.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely. That's actually was really helpful.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do right now is marry value proposition canvas with
There you
Jobs to
go.
Be Done and with user journeys. I mean, and then they seem compatible.
Yeah.
But yeah, our domain is semiconductors, so that's a bit complicated.
It's also complicated. That brings up a question I have for you, Manuela and Martin, though. You still had to make a lot of choices on what you were going to put in the video. So there's researcher bias there as well, too, in your storytelling, right? And that might have come from, hopefully it's grounded in that quant and that the overall observations, but sometimes you're just like, yeah, Hannah told me this thing that we have to put that thing that Hannah said in there. And it's a researcher bias that you bring into the story. Did any of that happen to you?
I mean, can we do research without biases?
No,
I think
don't know.
we always feel like that, and we always like, but I guess that's a decision we also made, also in the conversations, that we are humans. I take my own bias into conversations. Of course, as a researcher, I have ideas how to ask unbiased questions, and also making those decisions. In the end, we also want a story that makes it interesting to watch.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that we have to take out,
Right.
but we also try to make it. We have like those 20 people we interviewed beforehand, and we are not, and we try to make the story that we give a voice to all the 20 people that we interviewed, so that it's not only one person, but in the end, it's maybe just being honest in saying, yes, we are biased, but to be honest, we are also designing for people, and they are also biased. So being aware of it, conversate. We really tried to find also more, like, we wanted to actually talk, it's Pride month, we wanted to talk also, because finance and couples, it's not only the binary version. We tried it. We then realized we can't rely on the recruitment panels we work with. We started to work with the Turkish community in Berlin to get more access to other people than we normally have.
Right.
And we also feel that's the cool thing about stories, that people go learn about them, not only about, oh, the German was not that good and they couldn't express their thoughts. No, it's about getting to know them. But we also experienced product managers sometimes, it's not, the person is not like me, so do I believe the story? So the bias also in the audience. So we feel we can address that topic with it, but it's not easy from all sides.
Yeah, and we also try to address this with the story part, where it's really subjective, or gets more in this subjective area. And then we have this Jobs to Done really try, where we just get the information, and there we also don't cut or do something to put it in one direction, and it's really the.
And I was actually quite unhappy when I realized, when I did the whole analysis about the quantitative survey, I was really unhappy that my favorite Jobs to Be Done didn't win.
Right. But I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, though, you can have that very rich and compelling subjective storytelling, and the quantitative side of it, the Jobs to Be Done, can balance it out. so that the consumer of your research actually gets the two pieces, right? They do get the bias and the subjectivity, but then they get something that's more objective, or at least pretends to be more objective at the same time.
That's what we try. Yeah,
That's what you're trying to do. And I think that's what attracted me to the work that you were doing as well too, because jobs to be done can be very dry. And you know, you just get a bullet point and say, here, go innovate on this. And like, well, you know, I need a little bit more. But then I also find that, you know, things like personas, you know, some of the classic targets in UX also tend to come across to other stakeholders as very fuzzy and biased and things like that. And I feel that you kind of solve some of those problems there. I think there's another question from Den. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I opened up the chat to just more general questions, or if anybody wants to, if you're facing a challenge and you want to kind of pick our brains about
Sure,
it, this is a great time for that.
Ask us anything.
Yes. Den, do you want to come back and ask the question, or do
yeah,
you guys
sure,
want to talk about
sure.
Ulrich's framework?
So I'm actually curious, like, what's your take on Ulrich's definition of jobs to be done? And I mean, I read the book some time ago, so I don't remember all the details, but I remember that it was extremely detailed when it comes to defining core functional job. And I feel like a lot of people don't really follow that process. So I'm curious, how does it work for you? Did you try it?
I got my perspective, but I think Manuela, you were talking about that a little bit, kind of mixing things up a little bit on purpose, right?
I'm not super sure that I understand the question correctly. Maybe I can add in it when you start, Jim.
Well, you know, I think, you know, particularly Ulrich's approach, which I'm heavily influenced by, and I kind of recast in my book to some degree. It's very strict and it's very clear, and you have these buckets of information, right? You have a functional job, you have outcome statements, you have emotional and social factors, you have circumstances, what I call them, and there's a couple of other ones actually too. And the way you formulate that is very strict. And the level of granularity is very strict. And when I saw your list there, I felt like you were mixing certain types, but also mixing levels as well too. And I think you mentioned before what you wanted was something that people can. You wanted something that was self-evident to the audience, right? They would read, oh yeah, okay, I get that, and not necessarily following all the forms and the rules of other methods, right?
Yeah, I think I also come traditionally. My first contact with jobs to be done was in value proposition design from Osterwalder. So he had the three emotional, social, and functional anyways. And then my next step was Alan Clement, that is also more on the emotional side. And then I came to Strategy and your book, and then I was like, oh, it's actually a very cool method because it's so easy. Like also doing service on functional jobs is easier than on emotional jobs. So it's just like a straightforward concept, and I fell in love with that. But then I realized I'm still missing the emotional part. And I guess what you see, and we also feel that emotions makes the connection. I also work with B2B companies, and they are, when I tell them my insights about emotional jobs, they're like, whoa, we knew that our customers are in a race for talent, but we didn't know that it's about, I don't know, being a team and so on. So that's why I didn't want to head in the second level. And I guess, and then we just wanted to make it like, yeah, communicative, like Martin said, like just having the good communication started. Right. But I guess in a second version of it, it would be maybe a bit more structured. In a way, we in the end were also kept by the interviews we in the end had. And so, but in the next round, maybe there would be something, yeah, clear, but I would still keep emotional, functional, social on the same level, because it's, yeah, for me, it just it's important. Maybe because most time in my life I was really functional, and I'm discovering this other part on a personal level, you know, and then realizing, wow, it's so interesting to explore into that, and I want to have that in the first level. So it's maybe on the question, that's why I'm not sticking so much to one process, because I'm just learned from so different people how they do jobs to be done, that I started my own way, in a way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anna has a question. Anna, are you there?
Sure, yeah. Do you want me to jump
Yeah,
in?
hi, yes.
Hey,
Hi, Anna.
hi. I definitely work with a lot of product marketers. So maybe like past this phase of like the UX and this research that you're discussing, but just getting people to think beyond, we need a persona that has a job title is really challenging when I try to describe it, it's about the job. It's about the outcome, what's being done, and the emotional and the social aspects. Those are the important things for messaging, and to talk about not just the functional and the features, but people are so obsessed with who are we really talking to, and what is their job title. And I'm just really trying to broaden that out, being like, it's not really about that. So any tips on how to have those discussions?
I'm actually facing that right now, Anna. And one of the things that is very practical question is that, particularly on the marketing side of things, is that if you do want to broadcast messages and campaigns and things like that, you need the job title so who because that's an element in the database.
Yes.
An emotional and a functional job and a social job are not elements that you can pick out of a database to generate a mailing list, right? So I think that it's almost self-serving for folks to say, what's the job title? Because that's the piece of data that they want to align to, because that's how their data is set up. It's a real issue though, because we don't have social jobs in a database that we can say people that share this social job, right? It would be great if we did.
Yeah, that's true. Just what's happening is that it's just the CEO versus the product person versus the marketing person just fighting over like who their target audience is, and just getting out of that conversation. You can outreach to several of these groups, but it's more important that you're
target the job. The message is the job. Right. Yeah, agree.
It's the messaging at that point. Because I feel like, sure, you can broadcast to several titles and still find that out for you.
Correct. Yeah.
But just selling like it's, hey, we're talking about the emotional and the social jobs. That's your messaging can really tap into that. So I'm trying to focus on that. Did you have
something to add, Jen? I saw your video come on. I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, yeah, sure. An example I use, and it kind of surfaces people's bias, is I say, picture a vice president of a bank and ask them what comes to mind when you think of what that person is, right? Let's say they say a male in his 60s with 2 children and white man, low technology adopter. And stereotypes come to mind when you give a job role, right? When you give a job title, and kind of surfacing that, like, oh, a VP can be a Black woman in her 30s who is a completely early tech adopter, right? So surfacing how discussing around somebody's job title can have a lot of biases and stereotypes. It could maybe steer them away from clinging to a job title.
There you go.
Yeah, I think in this particular case, they're most interested in like, who are the stakeholders and who has the final say and who purchases the product. So I'm hoping doing job research can help with that.
Well, the hope is that that'll help you shift the conversation. I mean, that's the hope. And sometimes it might just be nudging. And I think a lot of us who have done research in this type of work, that you do all this work and you just get a nudge out of it. That's the outcome, is you move things a little bit in the right direction, and then you keep moving it, and it takes a lot of persistence a lot of times, right?
Yeah, I'm trying.
There you go.
Yeah,
but
the conversation is also about, are you product led as a company or marketing led? And I think that's where the fight comes in. And to be honest, that's also why I'm freelancer, because I hate those conversations. I mean, it's like I'm there presenting good results and they are fighting about who is the bigger. I mean, for me, it's clear great products come when you ask the users if you really want to change how they solve their problems in a better way. And that's like the basis. And I'm actually pretty, that's a good thing about being freelancer, because you do this talking before you enter the company, and when you realize it's not there, you can also leave. So, but of course, it's not that I'm not helping you with that. I know, but in a way, it's when I work for companies, it's also knowing, as Jim said, like I just can nudge one thing after the other, and sometimes there will be this change. They go to a conference, learn about product-led companies, and then everything changed. So yeah.
And I think we're going to have to wrap it up. What's the German word for nudge? I was just trying to think of that. I don't know a good word for nudge.
I think it's nudging. Is it?
You would say nudge, really?
I think it's a new word.
Ein Stückchen bewegen.
Ein Stückchen bewegen. There you go. All right, we're going to leave it there, everybody, with Ein Stückchen bewegen. I hope that we nudged a little bit here on this show. That Ein Stückchen bewegt wurde here together. Manuela, Martin, thanks so much for joining us here. It's been really fascinating, really, really great conversation.